In the small town of Blackwood, nothing exciting ever happened. The people lived quiet lives, and entertainment was, well, scarce. So, when posters for a traveling puppet show appeared overnight, the whole town buzzed with excitement. No one had ever seen a puppet show before, and the idea of it felt, well, magical. The show was set to be held in the town square, and everyone was eager to attend. The day of the show, the square was packed. Children ran around laughing and playing, while adults chatted in anticipation. At the center of it all was a large, ornate stage with velvet curtains and golden trim. The puppeteer, a tall, pale man dressed in a black coat, stood by the stage, silently watching the crowd with an unsettling smile. As the sun began to set, the puppeteer stepped onto the stage and bowed. "Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to a show you'll never forget," he said in a low, smooth voice. The curtains opened to reveal an array of beautifully crafted puppets, their wooden faces painted in vibrant colors. At first, the show was whimsical and light-hearted. The puppets danced, sang, and performed tricks, delighting the audience. Laughter filled the square as the puppets interacted with the children, playfully teasing them. But as the evening wore on, the tone of the show shifted. The puppets' movements became jerky, their smiles more sinister. The jokes became darker, laced with uncomfortable innuendos. A sense of unease spread through the crowd, but no one wanted to leave. They were mesmerized, as if something was holding them in place. Suddenly, one of the puppets, a marionette with long, tangled strings, turned to the audience and said, "Shall we show them what real puppets can do?" The crowd chuckled nervously, unsure of whether to laugh or feel afraid. Without warning, the marionette's strings snapped, but instead of falling lifeless to the stage, the puppet stood upright, moving on its own. The crowd gasped, but the puppeteer only smiled wider. One by one, the other puppets broke free from their strings, their wooden limbs creaking as they moved independently. A child in the front row screamed as one of the puppets, a grotesque clown with cracked paint on its face, jumped from the stage and landed in front of him. The child's mother pulled him close, but the puppet only stared at them with cold, lifeless eyes. It reached out a wooden hand, and the mother screamed. Before anyone could react, the puppets began swarming the crowd. What had started as a delightful show turned into chaos. The puppets, once charming and playful, now moved with unnatural speed, their wooden hands clawing at anyone they could reach. People ran in every direction, but it was as if an invisible force kept them trapped in the square. The puppeteer stood at the center of it all, laughing maniacally. "You're all my puppets now," he shouted, his voice echoing through the night. The town's mayor tried to confront the puppeteer, demanding he stop the madness, but as the mayor reached the stage, one of the puppets leapt at him, its wooden mouth opening wide. With a sickening crunch, it bit down on the mayor's arm, splintering his bones. Screams filled the air as the puppets dragged people to the stage, their wooden faces twisted into cruel smiles. The puppeteer began chanting in an ancient, guttural language, and the sky darkened. The ground beneath the stage cracked open, revealing a swirling vortex of darkness. One by one, the puppets tossed their victims into the pit, the screams of the townspeople growing fainter as they were swallowed by the darkness. The few who tried to escape found themselves unable to move, their feet rooted to the ground as if they had become marionettes themselves, controlled by invisible strings. As the last of the townspeople disappeared into the vortex, the puppeteer stepped off the stage, his eyes glowing with an unnatural light. "The show must go on," he whispered, his voice dripping with malice. And then, as suddenly as it had begun, the square was silent. The stage vanished, the puppeteer and his twisted creations gone without a trace. The town of Blackwood was left empty, the only sign of what had happened being the tattered posters for a puppet show that no one would ever forget. In the weeks that followed, travelers passed through the town and found it abandoned. There were no signs of struggle, no bodies, only the faint sound of laughter echoing through the empty streets at night. And in the center of the town square, a lone puppet stood, its lifeless eyes watching, waiting for the next audience to arrive.